Hey, this is Rocket Brain Surgeon. Today we're following around Oni-chan in the T110E3. This is a Tier 10 US tank destroyer characterized by an incredibly hard front, that typical big gun of the Tier 10 tank destroyers, and not a ton of mobility, which should be pretty familiar from its predecessors, the T-28 and the T-95. The map is Westfield, and Oni-chan is heading to that northwest corner where he's going to get a lot of direct face-to-face engagements. The front of an E3 is very strong. Yes, he's penned by a tortoise there, but he did expose his lower plate to the tortoise, so the penetration is explainable. If you can just hide that lower plate just even a little bit, then the E3 is nearly impenetrable. It has what looks like a weak spot on the top of the tank, that typical little tumor or cupola on top. That is not a weak spot. That is very hard to penetrate. Generally, don't try for it. Here he's showing that excellent gun depression on the T110E3. It's 8 degrees, best of the Tier 10 tank destroyers, and that's why he's able to play in what's a pretty steep hill for most tanks. If the E3 is so strong frontally, why doesn't he just bully his way into the enemy? Well, there's a couple waffles and dollars to donuts. They're sitting in A3 relatively hidden, so the second he pops out, he's just going to get annihilated. One of them actually comes up on radar right where we expect them to go. The other one is actually in town because he's a baddie. The gun on the E3 is excellent. The base round has 295 penetration. That is quite a bit, even to go through some turrets at Tier 10. If you need a little bit more stopping power, the premium round is APCR. That's very good, better than heat. And with penetration of 375, just click on tanks. The gun has 750 alpha. Your opponents are certainly going to feel it, but the reload time is a bit long. 17 seconds can feel like forever. That's why he's using this hard cover of pulling back on the hill and staying with his team so he can get cover while that reload happens. And it is certainly a good idea to stay with the team because the mobility of the E3 is not best in class. The traverse is not amazing. There will be Tier 10 mediums that are able to circle you, or little scouts, and the side armor of the E3 is not great, and the rear armor is practically non-existent. You can tell that he's taking a lot of stab shots. Now, part of that is just the close nature of the combat, and part of that is the low bloom of the tank and the very quick aim time of the tank. And here that high penetration helps as well. On a lot of tanks, you don't really care where it hits with 295 penetration. You just got to make contact with the tank and it's going to go through. Now, it might not look like it, but this is kind of where the limitations of a turretless tank destroyer come into play. There's very little that Oni-chan can do to force the action here. If you were a medium, you could go into the southeast corner with his platoon mate and they could try for a push there. If you were in a heavy, you could try and go around this hill to the right in the C4-ish area, and you could use your hard turret to get shots into that A3 circle and or flank shots into the people that are in this valley. However, he does not have that tough turret, he does not have that mobility, and he really can't square off against that WE-100 in front of him. He does put more or less a blind shot into that area when the W-100 disappears. Now, there's a problem brewing, and that is his teammates. His teammates have all kind of disappeared, and that means he is in real danger to get flanked by the FV. So he's floating around the right side of this hill towards the city for a couple of reasons. One is he does not want to expose his side to the waffle in A3, and he's also kind of floating towards areas where maybe he can hug a building or cut off some angles from the enemy, and his teammates happen to be more in city, and his platoon mate could possibly come up the hill and help him out if necessary. Oni-chan rotates the camera around and you can see the only places where he got penned is in that lower plate. You gotta hide that, and this tank is incredibly tough. The FV is floating west. If the tank in C1 dies, then Oni-chan is going to get flanked. That is going to be a certainty. So he keeps the hill in between himself and the FV, and the WTF pops up on radar. This is a really good shot. So the drop from the shell kind of puts it over a hill. Depending on the shell velocity and the range of engagement, that determines the arc that the shell will take, and there are a lot of surprising shots that you can put over cover. Here Oni-chan is hiding his front plate and pointing that very tough front towards the A3 spot where apparently the JP100 and a Waffle are sitting. The FV has floated back east, so that plan of kind of letting them bounce shots off the front of him is not going to be present anymore. However, the east side is experiencing success, and they should flank artillery and the rest of the enemy relatively quickly. So he just kind of has to wait it out a little bit. Notice that Oni-chan put the hill in between him and the FV again. That's something that's very subtle that a lot of people would miss. So the FV, when he peeks around, if he would have peeked around from the spot where he was before, around B4, C4, he would not get a side shot on Oni-chan. The Waffle finally comes out of hiding in pure desperation. However, the hull armor of the E3 is just too tough for it. The FV finally gets a little brave, but the game is over. Hope you enjoyed. Happy hunting.